The Vor'ka mother barely lifted her head as the last of the dropships roared away, kicking up a storm of dust and galactic indifference. She had been thrown out like garbage, and the aliens hadn't even had the decency to look back. Typical. The Galactic Council, in all its supreme wisdom, had spent decades selectively breeding her kind into the perfect hunters, only to get cold feet when they realized that perfect hunters didn't enjoy being leashed. And so, she and her cubs had been dumped on this miserable, forgotten rock to die. Her body protested as she shifted, pain lancing through old wounds. The council hadn't bothered patching her up before tossing her out. Waste of resources, they would say. If she survived, she deserved to live. If she didn't, well, that was a useful data point too. She let out a deep, guttural huff of contempt. Aliens. The ground beneath her was dry, cracked, and the precise shade of gray that suggested this planet had never known joy. The sky above, a swirling mass of sickly red clouds, didn't do much to contradict that impression. Somewhere in the distance, a wind howled through jagged rock formations, the sound eerily like laughter. Mocking her. Lovely. Her cubs, small, trembling, barely weaned, pressed against her for warmth. 3 in total. The runt, barely the size of her paw, whimpered softly. He wouldn't last long. She knew it. The other 2 were stronger, but even they were shadows of what they should have been. A good mother would have fed them by now. A better mother would have already found shelter. She was failing them. A noise cut through the thin air, something between a chirp and a mechanical whine. The mother tensed. Prey? No. The sound had the clipped, artificial precision of technology. Scavenger drones, most likely. She bared her fangs, eyes narrowing as a trio of sleek, insect-like machines descended from the sky, their metallic bodies reflecting the crimson glow above. The lead drone emitted a polite beep, as if to apologize for the inconvenience of her impending death. Oh, excellent. The council hadn't just abandoned her. They'd also sent an audience to take notes. Wouldn't want to miss out on the valuable scientific discovery of what happens when you strand a wounded predator with 3 helpless offspring on a death world. Groundbreaking research, truly. The drone whirred, scanning her with a faint blue light. Her fur bristled. She should attack, tear it apart before it had a chance to report. But she was too weak. And what would it change? They already knew she was dying. The report would just confirm it in high definition. She turned her head away, exhausted. The drone hesitated, then emitted another series of chirps before floating back up into the sky, satisfied. That was it then. The universe had officially stamped her file, expendable. She watched the drone disappear, resentment burning in her gut. If she had any strength left, she would have leapt after it just to spite them. But spite wouldn't feed her cubs. Spite wouldn't find them shelter. Spite wouldn't stop the reality settling over her like a thick, suffocating fog. They were going to die here. The thought gnawed at her. More than hunger, more than pain. She had fought wars, taken down creatures 3 times her size, bested the very aliens who had thought they could control her. And yet, in the end, her great battle would not be against an enemy, but against time. Against the slow, cruel certainty of starvation. Her cubs stirred against her, their tiny bodies fragile against the cold. She nudged them closer, wrapping them in what little warmth she could offer. No, not yet. The mother pushed herself to her feet, every muscle protesting, every wound screaming. She wouldn't just lie here and wait. If she had to die, she would die fighting. The runt let out a pathetic squeak, clearly unimpressed by her newfound resolve. Yes, yes, she rumbled, nudging him forward. Complain all you want, but we're moving. The other 2 followed, less vocal, but equally miserable. She led them forward, forcing her aching legs into motion. The landscape stretched before them, barren, endless, utterly without mercy. Good. She had never needed mercy anyway. Miles above, aboard a nondescript Galactic Council monitoring station, someone was watching. Well, an alien scientist mused, tapping his data screen. She's lasted longer than we projected. Fascinating. His colleague snorted. Not really. Give it a few hours. She'll collapse soon. The cubs won't last the night. A human voice cut in from the corner of the room. You guys do this often? Just toss living things on a death planets for fun? Commander Elias Carter leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. He wasn't supposed to be here. Technically, this station was restricted to council personnel, but he had a habit of being where he wasn't wanted. A side effect of his unfortunate human tendency to give a damn. The first scientist glanced at him, unimpressed. It's for research, right? Elias drawled. Research. So, when does the part start where you actually help her? The scientist gave him a blank look, like he had just suggested they donate their kidneys. Help? She's a failed asset. An uncontrolled genetic experiment. There's nothing to be done. Elias exhaled slowly, forcing down the familiar irritation that flared every time he spoke to these bureaucratic lizards. Nothing to be done, he echoed. Aha! He turned his gaze back to the screen. The feed showed the mother struggling forward, cubs in tow. He watched her falter, catch herself, then push forward again. Stubborn. Determined. Alive. She wasn't giving up. Elias hated a lot of things about the galaxy. The politics, the corruption, the casual cruelty. But watching something fight against impossible odds? That at least he understood. Well, he muttered under his breath, already calculating the fastest way down to the planet. Guess it's a good thing I don't take orders from the council. No one noticed as he slipped from the room, mind already made up. The aliens had left her to die. He was going to make sure she lived. Elias Carter had been called reckless before. Irresponsible. A liability. Which sure was fair. He had a habit of ignoring rules when they got in the way of his moral compass. But even he had to admit that landing on a restricted death world to save a wounded murder wolf and her pups was pushing it. The wind screamed as his ship, the Vagabond, punched through the toxic atmosphere, its hull plating already registering complaints about the acidic rain. Elias ignored the blinking warning lights, fingers flying over the controls. The Galactic Council wasn't exactly known for mercy, and if they caught him interfering with their totally ethical and not at all horrific scientific experiments, he'd be lucky if they just threw him in a cell. He found the Vor'ka mother near a cluster of jagged rock formations, barely standing, her cubs pressed against her legs. Up close, she was even bigger than he expected, easily the size of a full-grown tiger, with sleek black fur marred by battle scars. Her glowing yellow eyes locked onto him the second he stepped out of the ship, and the look she gave him was the universal translation for, "Come one step closer, and I will introduce you to my teeth." Elias stopped. Hands up. Non-threatening. Not that it mattered. She clearly had no interest in making friends. "Hey there," he said cautiously. "You look like you've had a rough day." The Vor'ka let out a low, warning growl. Her cubs, half-starved and shivering, peeked out from behind her legs. One of them, a little guy with 2 big ears, let out a tiny, pitiful snarl. Elias fought the urge to grin. "Tough kid. Look, I get it," he continued, voice calm. "Big scary alien shows up, and your first instinct is to rip his face off. That's fair, but I'm not here to hurt you." The mother did not look particularly convinced. She lowered her stance slightly, muscles tensed, debating whether he was worth the energy it would take to kill him. Elias sighed. "Okay, not much of a talker. That's cool. I can work with that." He reached into his pack, slow, deliberate movements, then pulled out a chunk of dried meat. Instantly, the growling stopped. The Vor'ka's nose twitched. "Ah," Elias smirked. "So we can negotiate?" He tossed the meat onto the ground and took a step back. The mother didn't move. Her cubs, however, weren't so disciplined. The bravest of the 3 crept forward, sniffed at the food, then snatched it up like it might disappear. The mother huffed, watching Elias like she was trying to determine if he was an idiot or just suicidal. "See? Not so bad," he said. "You eat, you live, I don't get mauled. Everybody wins." The Vor'ka did not immediately rip his throat out, which he took as a positive development. Slowly, warily, she sank back on her haunches, eyes still locked onto him. The message was clear. Asterisk, you are tolerated. For now, asterisk. Progress, Elias muttered under his breath. He grabbed his medkit and took a cautious step forward. The Vor'ka's ears flicked, but she didn't lunge. That was good. He crouched a few feet away and opened the kit, pulling out a field dressing. All right, let's patch you up. Or at least stop you from leaking so much. The Vor'ka gave him a deeply unimpressed look, but allowed him to approach. Up close, her wounds were worse than he'd thought. Deep gashes along her ribs, a nasty burn on her shoulder. She must have taken a direct hit in whatever fight had gotten her thrown out. This is going to sting, Elias warned. She didn't react as he pressed the disinfectant patch to her wound. No flinch, no growl. Just a steady, unblinking stare. You're either the bravest thing I've ever met, Elias muttered, securing the bandage, or you've just completely given up on life and are waiting for me to mess up so you can eat me. Her tail gave a single, slow flick. Yeah, I thought so. The cubs, now slightly less terrified, sniffed at his boots. The smallest one, the one with the big ears, plopped down beside his foot and immediately started chewing on his shoelace. Elias raised an eyebrow. Seriously? I'm trying to save your mom? And you're robbing me? The cub's tail wagged. Unbelievable, Elias muttered, but he let it slide. By the time he finished treating the mother's wounds, the rain had started again, thin, acidic, eating away at the already dead landscape. Elias glanced up at the sky. They couldn't stay out here. All right, listen, he said, standing. You can't stay here, and I doubt the council's going to swing by with a fruit basket and an apology letter. My ship's warm, I got more food, and I promise I won't sell your cubs to the highest bidder. Probably. The Vor'ka just stared at him. Elias sighed. That was a joke. You're a tough crowd, you know that? He stepped back toward the ship and gestured. Come on, let's get out of here before the aliens realize I'm breaking about 15 different laws. The Vor'ka didn't move. Elias groaned. Oh, for look, if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. If I wanted to cage you, you'd already be in one. But I don't, because unlike some people, I don't believe in abandoning things just because they're inconvenient. Something flickered in the mother's expression. A pause. A consideration. She turned, nudged her cubs toward the ship, and, slowly, begrudgingly, followed. Elias grinned. That's more like it. The ramp closed behind them, sealing out the storm. As the ship took off, the mother settled onto the floor, eyes half-lidded in exhaustion. Her cubs curled up against her, their tiny bellies finally full. Elias sat across from them, arms crossed. So, what do I call you? The mother flicked her ears, unimpressed. Right? Not a talker. I can work with that. He glanced at the runt, who had once again claimed his shoelace as a personal chew toy. And you, seriously, kid, you've got a problem. The ship shuddered as it broke through the atmosphere. Elias leaned back, exhaling. He had no idea what the hell he was doing, what the council would do when they found out, or how he was supposed to take care of a battle-worn alien predator and her 3 growing cubs. But for now, he'd take the win. Elias Carter had spent his life making bad decisions, but this one was going to be legendary. The vagabond bucked violently as another plasma round streaked past its hull, narrowly missing the engines. Alarms blared in protest, flashing red warnings about shields failing, structural integrity at critical levels, and the general fact that he was about to die in a very expensive fireball. Yeah, I know, Elias snapped at the ship's control panel, yanking the stick hard to the left. The ship rolled, dodging another shot by what he estimated to be a very uncomfortably close margin. The Galactic Council did not take kindly to theft, and apparently, that definition now extended to rescuing an abandoned genetic asset, which Elias found particularly rich, considering they'd been perfectly fine tossing the Vor'ka mother and her cubs onto a hell world to rot. The mother was currently crouched beside him in the cockpit, tail lashing, eyes locked on the pursuing council frigate with the kind of deep, primal loathing that transcended language. She had been quiet since they'd left the planet, but now she looked like she was about to launch herself through the viewport and take down the warship with her bare teeth. Listen, I get it, Elias gritted out, jerking the ship into another evasive spiral. I also want to rip their smug faces off, but unless you've secretly got a degree in advanced starship combat, I'm going to need you to trust me on this one. The mother gave him a slow blink that translated roughly to, I trust you slightly more than I trust explosive decompression, but only just. Good talk, Elias muttered. One of the cubs, because apparently this wasn't stressful enough already. Chose that moment to scramble up onto the console, his tiny paws mashing buttons that should not have been mashed. No, hey. Elias caught the little troublemaker before he could eject the life support system. Kid, I love the enthusiasm, but maybe let's not sabotage our one escape route, yeah? The cub yawned in his face. Unbelievable, Elias grumbled, setting him back down. Your whole species is impossible. The mother made a sound that might have been agreement. Or amusement. Hard to tell. The frigate was gaining. Too fast, too heavy with weaponry. If they kept running, they'd get blown apart before they reached the jump point. Elias clenched his jaw, scanning the controls. There had to be something, some way out. Then he saw it. A derelict station, half buried in the orbit of a shattered moon. It was old, probably abandoned for decades, maybe centuries, but it still had power. And more importantly, it had automated defenses. It was a terrible idea. Elias grinned. Perfect. He yanked the ship toward the station. The Vor'ka mother tensed but didn't protest. The frigate followed, hailing him through comms. ***, unidentified vessel. This is Council enforcement. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. You are harboring stolen assets. Compliance will be met with leniency, ***. Elias flipped the comms on. Hey there, enforcement. Quick question. How's your shield integrity? There was a pause. What? Yeah, that's what I thought. Elias killed the signal and gunned the thrusters. The station's automated defenses woke up fast. Ancient, rusty turrets pivoted toward the vagabond, scanners registering it as an intruder. Then, at the last second, Elias dove beneath the station's structure, skimming dangerously close to its outer hull. The Council frigate wasn't so lucky. The turrets locked onto the bigger target and opened fire. Bright streams of energy tore through the vacuum, slamming into the frigate's shields. The ship lurched, trying to evade, but the turrets had no sense of mercy and a very good sense of aim. The shields buckled, sparks flaring along the frigate's side. Elias whooped. Oh, that's satisfying. The mother watched the destruction with keen interest, her ears flicking forward. Don't give me that look, Elias said. This is technically your revenge. I'm just the getaway driver. The frigate attempted to disengage, limping away with severe hull damage. Elias didn't wait to see if they'd call for reinforcements. He punched in the coordinates, bringing the jump drive online. As the stars blurred and the ship leapt in a faster-than-light speed, the alarms finally stopped. The cockpit fell into a tense, exhausted silence. Elias leaned back, exhaling. Well, that went terribly, but also not as terribly as it could have, so I'm calling it a win. The mother huffed and flopped onto the floor, ears twitching. See? You're getting it. One of the cubs, probably the same one who had tried to crash the ship, climbed onto Elias's lap and promptly fell asleep. Elias looked down at the tiny, furry menace and sighed. Fine, but this is not a regular thing. Got it? The mother, smug, did not dignify that with a response. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, letting himself breathe. He didn't know where they'd go next, or how long they could stay ahead of the Council. But for now, they were free, and that was enough.